at its best, repentant and seeking forgiveness. So what can you do? As we consider ways to strengthen communication within the church, I want to leave you with several suggestions. First, be transformed by God's Word. Live it. Become the Word preached. Everything else, I think, is of secondary importance. Second, help communicators in the church to speak and write more effectively. That has already been suggested. Third, help the church at every level to acquire and become proficient in communications and information technology. Fourth, don't back off from proclaiming a message that may go against the grain. Speak the truth in love, even when challenged or critiqued. Fifth, find ways to highlight and hold up the church's message. Make it heard amid all the competing voices. Sixth, help the church develop interactive forms of communication that engage others, especially the young, as Busted Halo suggested. Seventh, survey bishops and diocesan communication directors to determine what they most need to better communication in the church. From the results of that survey, help develop affordable resources. Eighth, identify best practice and provide models for effective communication strategies. Ninth, provide workshops for bishops and communication directors to enhance their knowledge and skills of techniques by which to communicate more effectively. And finally, let us work together to create a climate of candor throughout the church. You know, there is much to be done. And it reminds me of the story of Chicken Little. You all remember Chicken Little, the fellow that thought the sky was going to fall? And he was running around his house panicking about the fact that the sky was going to fall. And he ran out into his backyard and he threw himself on the ground with his little feet up in the air. And the policeman was walking by. And he looked at him and said, "Chicken Little, what are you doing?" And he said, "The sky's going to fall, the sky's going to fall." And he said, "Chicken Little, how are your puny feet going to hold up the sky?" And Chicken Little looked at him and said, "You do what you can. You do what you can." And that is our hope, that we can do what we can, little by little, step by step, to develop and improve and enhance the communication of God's great message, the good news of Jesus Christ. Thank you.
Bishop, thank you very much for those powerful reflections. As a communicator, your authenticity is very evident. I confess that I would have loved to have seen you on Broadway, but I will be content in the knowledge that Broadway's loss is the church's gain. Before we adjourn to lunch, we have time for a few questions or comments from the audience. So, Fred?
Thank you so much. The metaphor of theater, it was just wonderful. If we look at the language of theater as being rich in image and authentic and personal and inviting response, and look at communication as effective communication as those, and you say, okay, this is also now happening with new media, with rich symbols, and community which is virtual, online as well as physical. What language would you use to describe the sacramental nature of that?
Do we want to do 2 questions? Okay.
Do you want to take one more question and then I'll respond?
Of course, sacramental language is metaphor and image as we encounter Jesus Christ through the sacramental signs. And so as Catholics, of course, we do come to our experience of life with a great sense of imagination. This was one of Father Greeley's most significant messages as he was doing some of his writing about the importance of the Catholic imagination and the ability to express meaning about life in images and ways that capture people's hearts. And I think this is certainly something that we need to do today. You know, theater, there's a lot of dud plays around. Some awful experiences where, you know, people walk away wondering what it was all about. And that can be true sometimes also in the church. But I think we do need to look at those moments when the church has spoken powerfully to people's lives. I remember being in Nepal and visiting in the Bhutanese refugee camps there. And the priest there, Father Varki, had such a powerful way of communicating to his people in bondage the possibility of hope that the scriptures bring to their lives. And it captured them, it sustained them in a time of great pain. I was reconnected to a Bhutanese family in Tucson just this week, and we were reflecting upon Father Varki's preaching and his communication of God's word. And this man was telling me how important that was for his people, because in the midst of their suffering, in the midst of their struggles, in the midst of their depression, in the midst of their fear, he was the one who sustained them through the word that he preached, which spoke specifically to the struggles, the suffering, the experiences of their lives. So the sacraments, of course, are those moments of grace that we experience in our life and that sustain us. Certainly the celebration of the Eucharist, the reception of communion, can be for people a deep and powerful experience of grace in their lives, in moments of joy and in moments of sorrow and suffering. And so we know how to speak the language of image and metaphor, but I think we need to do that more consistently, more effectively, because as in that little reflection on the priest preaching and going on, it's not that touches people's lives, but it's when the message meets where they're at in terms of their own struggles.
Bishop, you talked about the fact that we live in a world and we encounter that